the films come many stories of the time in which Tom lived and his own personal involvement. In 1961, Prime Minister Robert Menzies visited Wagga. He arrived at the airport in Forest Hill, and Tom was there to shoot his arrival for the Advertiser. After Tom had obtained his photos, he decided he wanted to shake the Prime Minister's hand, and he did so, leaning into the Prime Minister's car regardless of the crowd and entourage.
If Tom made up his mind to do something, then he would do it. He'd move heaven and earth to do it. No, that's the sort of thing he'd do. I do remember a story, and the time the Archbishop of Canterbury came to Wagga. I think the one and only time the head of the Anglican Church ever came to Wagga. And there was special permission was granted for a photo to be taken inside the church, bearing in mind in those days you couldn't take photos of baptisms or weddings in church. That came much later. But we got special permission for Tom to go and take a photograph of the Archbishop of Canterbury, who was Geoffrey Fisher at the time. They took the photo, got back to the office, and Tom discovered he hadn't taken the lens cap off. Dreadful, how do you do? The chief sub-editor of the night was fuming. We'd gone to all this trouble, and Tom didn't lose his temper on that occasion. He just said, "I'll get the photo." And away he went in the old blue ute. He went up to the rectory, which was in Peter Street, and he was able to talk the Archdeacon and the Archbishop into going back to the church around about 8 o'clock on a Sunday night, and getting his ecclesiastical gear on again, going into the pulpit, and they took the photo.
Tom kept and trained many animals in his house, another testament to his quirky nature. Tom trained dogs and goats to do various tricks. He had a passion for animals, even picking up injured wildlife from the side of the road and nursing them back to health. In 1963, at the opening of the Wagga Civic Theatre, one of Tom's goats appeared in the performance. The Civic Theatre opening was an enormous social event, with thousands of people passing through the theatre on its first day. Tom was there as always, documenting the event and his goat's involvement.
It was a huge event in Wagga for the day, because I think it cost something like £250,000, which in today's money was a very big investment. And the opening of it had all the hoi polloi from everywhere and for it. And of course there were many events took place in conjunction with that. I think within the first 2 days, even though the theatre only seated 500 people, they recorded 2,500 people had actually visited the theatre, and there were special play productions on the stage and whatever. Just what Tom's goats were doing there, I'm not too sure.
In 1964, the bank in Jerilderie, a small town near Wagga, was robbed. The robbery took place at the same bank and in the same fashion as when Ned Kelly robbed the bank in 1879. The Daily Advertiser flew Tom with journalist Simon Terry to the town to cover the story.
Yeah, it was a classic story for any young journalist to be involved in. It was very unusual in those days to charter an aeroplane, but because it was out of town and we wanted the story in time, we had a twin-engine plane fly us from Wagga. The pilot didn't even know whether there was a landing strip at Jerilderie, but he said, don't panic. We were a little bit, but he just circled the town until shortly before midday some vehicles converged on a paddock indicating that was a good place to land, and it made it very easy for us to get the story because we had people chauffeur us around town, introduce us to everybody from the bank manager and his family who'd been robbed through to other people and I think we got the story in the space of about an hour and a half and back in the aeroplane back to Wagga. Had we driven into town, it would have taken so much longer.
Tom's presence, he's part of history himself, and I think it was important to document such events as the opening of the Civic Theatre, and his photographs are important.
I feel that someone who had spent his life in this region and went to all these events, did so many things, all these things, all the people that he knew, his heart was here, and otherwise he wouldn't have done it. And therefore, I feel that someone like him should be documented.